everyone. So welcome to your 60-minute yin practice. I'm so happy that you were able to join today, even though I know sometimes the home practice is hard to show up on your mat. It's a lot bigger of a commitment to carve out that space at home and to especially show up when there's a lot going on around us, when the world feels a little bit unsteady. That showing up on our mat means we sometimes have to confront those feelings or thoughts or experiences. So I ask that you just show up today in the most comfortable place that's possible for you. So you could start by start coming into seated. You might start on your back, on your belly. There's no right or wrong to your practice. And then you'll just allow your eyelids to drop closed and just start to settle into your body. So if you need any shifts along the way, you're welcome to take those. Don't feel like you have to drop in all at once. That this is a gradual process of becoming here on our mat. This topic of conversation has come up a couple of times since we've started these home yoga practices, of how challenging it really is to be here. And I was actually reading a passage from Glennon Doyle's new book, Untamed, and I just wanted to share it with you to start off your practice, to simply give yourself permission to just be here and to just feel. I just wanted to tell you something that somebody told me in the beginning. It's okay to feel all of the stuff that you're feeling. You're just becoming human again. You're not doing life wrong. You're doing it right. If there's any secret that you're missing, it's that doing it right is just really hard. Feeling all of your feelings is hard, but that's what they're there for. Feelings are for feeling, all of them, even the hard ones. The secret is that you're doing it right, and that doing it right hurts sometimes. I think as we allow ourselves to step out of this idealized world that when we're doing it right, everything is easy and happy and put together, we start to allow ourselves permission just to simply be and to become who we are in that moment. So as you either lay here or sit here on your mat, can you offer yourself that permission to just be as you are? To feel what you feel and to not place a judgment on that or have to know an answer for why you feel that way or why you're experiencing something the way you are. That this is a part of living. The mountains and the valleys we have to climb, the ups and the downs. And especially when we come to our mat, it's a deep sinking into self. And sometimes that means meeting ourselves where we'd rather not. Meeting ourselves in those moments we'd rather tuck underneath the yoga mat or sweep elsewhere into a corner we don't have to look at. So I encourage you today to just meet yourself in all of those dark corners, in all of that swept up mess, both the joy and the sorrow, and to just know that it's okay to simply feel. You even just start with feeling into your breath as you are. Perhaps recognizing that each breath is really a miracle. This life-giving rhythm to your body that provides you the stability of the next breath and the next and the next. And that in the smallest of ways, this breath that you're feeling, that you're experiencing, that perhaps you can even hear in this moment, this breath is a reminder that you are moving forward, that you are growing, and that you just have to take this step by step. Wherever you have landed on your mat, you can just start to bring some gentle movements into your body to start to just wake up out of this shape. If you're on your back, it might be nice to take a giant stretch overhead, or if you're in seated, you might uncurl the legs. We'll meet into child's pose to start today's practice, but take as long as you need to come into this shape, that there's absolutely no rush. And when you come into child's pose, a couple of options. You can take the knees wide and big toes together, or you can always bring knees together and big toes together. If this feels like a lot for your knee joints, you can place a pillow behind your hamstrings on top of your calves to just support the angle of the knees. And then as you sit your hips back to your heels, you can start to walk your fingertips forward and nuzzle into this shape. So it's not that you're reaching to get somewhere, but that you're really just beginning to sink in. And before you feel like you've landed in being rooted here in the stability, can you find the fluctuations? Can you allow yourself to just be in flux? That you can both be rooted and shifting at the same time. Almost thinking of your body as a tree, that you can dig your roots deep, deep, deep down into the earth so that you're allowed to sway, that it's okay to shift from side to side and forward and back. And metaphorically, that you can make these shifts in your day, that it's okay to move off the track. It's okay to feel away from center, or to feel like you've taken a few steps back, because you'll always be rooted in that grounding of who you are. So just take a couple of deep breaths as you land in this pose, and notice how the breath offers you depth to just sink in a little bit further. That you don't have to sink to this fullest shape right from breath one, but that there's always space for you to move. And then with your hips and knees rooted into this shape, can you begin to shift the upper body, walking your fingertips over towards the right side of your mat. Now this could be really gentle. It might not be very far that you reach over. Some of you might walk a little bit further, maybe even off of your mat. You know, always place your left hand over top of your right, but try to make sure that your forehead can stay rooted. So if your forehead is lifting off of the earth, just bring a pillow underneath your forehead or something to support it, so that you can still continually feel this rooting down, that each breath is connecting you closer and closer in towards your practice. And as you start to shift into this shape, even though you might actually be in the shape, as you start to shift into depth, can you feel how your breath is moving through the left side of your body? Can you notice how you not only expand into the lungs, but into the left side of your rib cage, your left shoulder, the space between your bottom two ribs and your hip bone on that left side. Can you allow yourself some space to soften through the body as you exhale? Can you allow yourself more space on the inhale to explore and to expand into? And then can you just simply allow this pose to be what it is? a shape that offers you connection to this moment, a shape that offers you connection to self. That it's not really ever about the shape, but about our ability to be in our own bodies, our right to feel as we are in that moment without dismissing ourselves. So whether that's joy, gratitude, or whether there's a little bit of sadness or anger creeping in, that you have every right to just feel here. And when it all feels like a lot to take in at once, just simply come back to your breath and take this breath by breath. You can always ease out of depth, come closer back to your center, be still, so that when you're ready, you can take those little fluctuations. You can start to lean a little bit more into the practice. Gently start to guide your hands all the way back through to center, and stay really mindful for this transition. So you can take this really, really slowly. Start to peel yourself away from your mat, lifting your hips from your heels, shoulders more towards your fingertips. And then you can walk your knees in. If you're feeling sticky in the spine, you might gently sway side to side or rock your hips forward or back. Like, even though the yin practice is based around stillness, there's always these beautiful opportunities just to move. Maybe releasing anything that feels old. Maybe releasing anything that feels unnecessary. And then from this place, you can slowly make your way down onto your forearms and start to nuzzle your knees back until you land onto your hips. So you're laying on your belly. Walk your feet out wide to the corners of your mat. You're up on your forearms in a Sphinx pose. And then walk your left hand about one handprint forward so you have a nice big gap between your left elbow and your rib cage. And begin to slide your right arm underneath that gap. So your right shoulder comes towards the earth. You can grab your pillow or a block to place underneath your right cheek. And you're coming into this twisted variation to open up the shoulders. Make sure that you can support the weight of your head as you twist the body so that you're not cranking into the side of the neck. Now, if both hips down feels a little bit awkward for your low back or it causes any aches, you can also take the variation of half frog here and slide your left knee up, bending into the left hip and left knee. And that just allows you to feel a little bit more support and maybe less weight onto that right shoulder. At any time, you can always shift away from this pose and just come back onto your belly and pause there. Make sure that your right shoulder is moving away from your right earlobe so that you're creating some space to lengthen out the side and back of your neck. And then just allow yourself some room to sink in. To be within your physical body without the need to run or shift or have all the answers. To simply be here with your breath. Soften into any of those areas that you're clenching or tightening the muscles. Relaxing into the backs of your legs and your glutes. Relaxing into your lower back. All the while feeling the rise and fall of your breath. And know that even here, amidst any of these sensations or discomfort, you're free to just be in this moment. That we don't always have to be seeking the happiness. We don't always have to be seeking the easy. That it's okay to be in challenge. It's okay to be in frustration. And amidst all of those emotions, that you're still free to just breathe. Take 5 more breaths exactly as you are. And can you let the distraction of that internal dialogue of your mind just become a little quieter? That internal chit-chat lower in volume. Maybe even the external environment just starts to fade. And the importance of your breath becomes so much deeper. To come out of this shape and begin to walk your left hand in towards your body. You can press into your left hand enough to lift yourself up, unwind your right arm, and then just lower down and take your opposite cheek. You can move your block out for a moment if you'd like to the mat. Palms face up, down beside your body. And if you're craving movement, you might rock your hips left and right, or you can pick up your feet and drop your knees or your feet side to side. If your low back has a lot of sensitivities, it might even feel nice to press back to a child's pose for a moment or two. So no, that's always optional before you move to the other side. So whenever you're ready, you'll start to walk your hands forward and come back into that Sphinx shape with shoulders over top of your elbows. And then you can walk your right hand, one handprint forward, so you have a little bit more space to slide your left hand underneath so that your left shoulder comes to the mat, and then grab your block or your pillow again so that your left cheek is also supported. Feet can always walk out a little bit wider if you're feeling a lot of tension in the low back, or if you took the frog variation on the other side, you can play with it here, bending into the right knee. So your right knee just draws out to the side. Wherever you have chosen to land, make sure there's still space for the side of your neck. There's still space for you to be present within this pose. Our feelings are essentially information and data from external sources. That our feelings attach us to what is happening around us and how that affects us. And sometimes we hold on to past feelings, whether in the recent past or the very distant past. And they get stuck in the physical body. And it's a feeling of tension or discomfort. And so as you just learn to lean into this pose while still feeling really grounded and rooted, as you just start to embrace this idea of sinking in, you can start to soften those places where you grip, where you hold on. And as you let physical tension go, you can also offer yourself a channel to release the emotional tension, to release the stuck emotions, to even just release stuck thoughts or experiences. You can offer yourself to just become heavier and heavier with each exhale breath. And each breath that you take as you lean in is a reminder that you're still supported, that you're still rooted by this rhythm, that no matter what you're experiencing, you're free to be here. And that even when life feels hard or your practice feels hard, that often means that you're doing it right, because you're allowing yourself to not only feel into the good, into the peaceful, into the ease, but also into the destruction, also into the challenge, the rejection, the resistance. Your practice is a cycle of rebirth and death. We close off with Shavasana, our corpse pose, so that we can be rebirthed. But we don't have to wait till the end of the practice to find this freedom. That in each moment there's an opportunity to let go, especially as your physical body sinks into the exhale. And there's an opportunity to start over as you breathe in. To let go of the narratives, let go of the chit-chat, and just simply breathe. And start to ease your way out of this side, sliding your right hand in. And then as you press into your right hand, just lifting yourself enough away from the mat that you can unwind your left arm. Take your opposite cheek down and allow your hands to gracefully fall beside your body, palms face up. If you're craving movement, take your movement, whether it's feet up and side to side, or just a gentle rocking of the hips. We're going to meet back to where we started practice in child's pose. So no rush to get there. Whenever you're ready, hands will plant beside your shoulders. As you press into the earth, you'll start to rise and lift away. If you're still craving movement, take it here in tabletop. That's always such a beautiful place to shift through. And then once again, you'll sink your hips back to your heels, gathering your hands forward. Take about 3 full breaths in just your traditional child's pose at center. Allowing yourself to come back to feeling connected and grounded, digging those roots deep. And then you can start to walk your hands slightly over to the left, knowing that at any point you can always change the depth. You can go further, you can go less. So just giving yourself space to move through the pose rather than move into it and simply wait. That each breath is actively a part of this pose rather than just counting down the minutes until the pose is over. There's a story from yoga philosophy in the Ramayana that has always just landed with me. And it's at the end of the story when Sita, the princess of Ram, comes home after being captured and her integrity is questioned. And to prove her integrity, she has to walk through this fire of truth. And as she walks through this fire, the lotus flower blossoms at her feet, essentially saving her from the flames. And it's such a beautiful reminder for me that it's okay to be in the fire. It's okay to feel the flames licking at the sides of our body. It's okay to feel the heat. And the lotus flower being that reminder of the journey from the mud and the depths of the darkest waters to the clarity of the surface. That often, in order to find ourselves, in order to rebirth a new connection to self, a new way of being, we often have to be in the destruction first. We have to be in the challenge. We have to feel the strength that we're made of in order to press on. And that doesn't mean we have to fight with our bodies or minds or self. It doesn't mean it has to be painful. But it's a reminder that it's not always easy or comfortable. But that there's always clarity that comes out of obstacle. There's always a lesson through it all. And as we just learn to root ourselves within, that we're able to sway and navigate this changing world around us. If you haven't already, can you bring your attention to that right side of your body and the shifting of sensations as you inhale and as you exhale? Is there room for you to just sink into your body and perhaps step away from thought? Step away from the shoulds or the shouldn'ts, the judgments, the expectations, and just simply breathe. Gently, you can start to walk your fingertips all the way back through to center. Take a full breath in and a long exhale breath out. And start to peel yourself away from your mat, leaning into tabletop. Now personally, I like to come into this next pose from down dog, but you can take it from tabletop. If you want to stretch out the backs of your legs, it might feel nice to just slide one foot back at a time instead of down dog, and just give the hamstrings and calves some lengthening. Otherwise, you can find that same sensation with a little bit more energy into down dog. So you can always pedal out your feet or sway side to side. Just start to bring some movement into your body. Okay. For this next pose, whether you're coming from tabletop or down dog, make sure that you have props available. So if you are in down dog and they're quite far away, you can always meet in tabletop and bring them closer. Your right knee will start to glide forward towards your right wrist, and then step your right foot to the outside of your right hand. Okay, lower your back knee down. Okay, check in right away. If this is a lot of pressure on the back knee, just pick up the knee again, place a pillow underneath your knee, and you can untuck your toes, or you can keep them tucked, so whatever feels best. Now pick up that front foot and turn your toes out to about 1 or 2 o'clock, so that you're externally rotating the hip, that your knee points in the same direction as your toes. Now, if this feels like a lot for that left hip, you can always grab another pillow and slide it from the front so that your hip has a little place to rest. Now, you're welcome to stay up onto hands. You can lower down onto forearms. If you wanted to come into twisted dragon, you could always take right hand to your right inner thigh, rolling to the pinky side edge of your right foot. Okay, so just choosing whatever variation serves you here. And also recognizing that we will be in this for an amount of time. And as time moves on, you'll find more and more depth. So it's not necessary to push into the pose and to force. Just allow yourself to ease in. And if you ever need to come out, if it's feeling too long or too deep, just shift your hips back, straightening up that front leg to give your left hip and right hip a bit of a release. And then know that you can always come back into this shape. Dragon, for me, is one of those poses that initiates that feeling of being in the fire. That feeling of coming up against my thoughts, my beliefs. That the stories and narratives start to happen. And the fidgeting to distract from being in the discomfort. And so this is a pose that I personally really, really need to focus on breath. To not try to wish the time away, but to allow myself to just be in that place. And to just be open to whatever wisdom or knowledge wants to land on that day. And that it doesn't have to be perfect or doesn't have to be easy. But that it really is in these moments, I think that I've learned to be kinder to myself. I've noticed the degrading way that it's easy to talk to yourself when you feel uncomfortable. Learn to shift that languaging and to be in the middle of that fire, and at the same time know that you're in that journey of the lotus flower, of moving from the stuck, the mud, the darkness, towards the freedom and clarity of the surface. You're already more than halfway through this shape. What are you willing to let go of in order to find some space to be reborn or to feel fresh, anew? Where can you soften and find more compassion for self? Where can you switch the dialogue or the habits? Last couple of breaths. Come back to your center if you've fallen away. And if you are down on your forearms, just come back up onto your hands. Slowly, slowly, slowly start to shift your hips back so you can straighten out that front leg. Now you can always heel toe your right foot more through center if you'd like and fold into a half splits. Can feel nice for the back of the right leg and along either side of the spine. If you're craving a different movement, you're also welcome to come into that. We will eventually meet either back to tabletop as you started or down dog. So taking the weight into your hands, you can just start to slide your right knee back. Now if the hips are feeling especially sticky, maybe you shift hips side to side in tabletop, or you pedal out the feet in down dog. Okay, so there's no right or wrong, just tune into what your body needs in that moment. We're gonna come into the other side. So wipe the judgment or the expectations before you move into the shape. And then when you're ready, left knee will slide forward and then left foot steps to the outside of your left hand. And then you'll slowly lower your back knee down. Place pillows under the back knee if it's feeling a little bit sensitive. I always like to support the right hip because I find I dump a little bit too deep in it no matter where I am in this shape. So you can always just stack pillows above the right knee to support the thigh. You can always take blocks for your hands if you want to be upright or onto forearms. Make sure your left toes point out to the side so that your toes aren't pointing forward, but that there's that external rotation of the hip moving out. Okay. And then just check in with where you've landed. And even if this isn't where you wanted to show up in this moment, that's okay. Take the shifts knowing that you're rooted in this deeper knowledge of self. So even when we sometimes bypass that mind-body knowledge or wisdom, that we can always, always, always come back to it. Okay, so your body knows what it needs. It knows what is too much and too little. So trust that those little nudges you're getting from your body are, I like to think of them as your soul's way of speaking to you. If you do need to shift or lessen, I encourage you to do so without judgment, without having to make those shifts or movement mean anything. That you can just simply be there in the movement or in the stillness. That even amidst anything you're experiencing or feeling right now, notice how your breath is still flowing. How nobody has taken away your freedom to just breathe. Can you find a little bit more length in that exhale. Can you find a little bit more space in softness rather than control? Rather than hardening yourself to just get through this, can you be fluid? About 1 more minute left in this shape. Can you find a little bit more room for yourself to just simply land? Slowly start to walk your hands back onto your mat and take your time to bring your hips back towards your right heel, straightening out that front leg. If you want to heel toe that foot more through center, that's totally okay. Maybe you just fold and drape your body. Allow your spine to release. Feel how all those sensations, that experience of being in the fire, how that has faded. And now you're here on the other side. And all it was 4 minutes of sitting with yourself. When you're ready, you can gently slide that front leg back. It might feel nice to shift side to side. You might take a down dog or sit your hips back to your heels. So there's no right or wrong movement. And we'll begin to shift our knees so that they're one beside another. And then bring your hips back onto your heels. So you're sitting shoulders on hips on feet. Now, if that feels like a lot, you can take pillows, lift your hips up, pillows behind your knees, and sit back. You could also sit up onto a block. Now, if this feels good, you're welcome to stay here. Otherwise, you can lean forward to place weight onto your hands and then separate your feet with your knees still together. So you'll sit your hips back between your heels for hero's pose. Now for some of you, this might be enough and you just stay upright. Some of you might be looking for a little bit more sensation down the front of the legs. You might play with just leaning some weight back onto your hands. You may walk down onto forearms. If you have bolsters or pillows you want to lay back on, you can move them behind your spine so that you can start to lay back into a reclined position. Just make sure in this pose that you don't feel that pulling in your knees, so that there's always that support, knowing you can just come back up to seated, which is still giving you that opening into tops of feet, ankles, the muscles of the front line of your body. Heroes is another pose that can be quite challenging. That can sometimes feel like you're in the fire. So taking those same lessons that you perhaps carved out in those last few poses of dragon, maybe you just bring that here. It's going to be a shorter hold, but even so, knowing that, can you Still just be in the moment rather than counting down the minutes. Rather than wishing time away, can you allow yourself to be in the flame, but still be soft? Maybe that means closing your eyes to leave distractions at bay. Deepening into your breath. Let's just take 3 more breaths in whatever shape you've landed in. And if you are all the way back, just take your time so as not to shock the spine. So you can start to tuck your chin to your chest, walking up onto forearms and then hands. You can walk yourself forward to a tabletop and then shift your feet to either side so you can scoop your legs around and in front. Now with this shape, the feet might have felt a little bit sticky, so you could circle the ankles, you can point and flex the toes. If the backs of the legs are feeling quite compressed, you might even just hinge forward and offer some length to the backs of your legs. Just take about a minute to release from that last shape. So whether that's with an upright spine and moving the feet, or that's just taking a draping over top of the thighs. Allow the sensation of where you just were to fade so that you can step back into this moment. If you have folded all the way, walk your hands along your legs. So you're stacking your vertebrae one by one as you slowly come back up through center. And then slide your heels in so your feet plant. You can bring any props that you want towards the right side of your mat before you lower down. And then using your hands to support you, begin to draw the hip bones up towards the bottom 2 ribs. You'll just make your way down onto your back. Now it might feel nice to wash knees side to side. You could extend out in a giant stretch or take your knees into your chest. I'm just gonna close off to lengthen out the body once again. So whenever you're ready, you can extend your legs out long. Reach your arms overhead. Hands and feet moving in opposite directions. As you inhale, lengthen from your fingertips to your toes. And as you exhale, just gently let that release. Okay. I'll cue a more restorative variation of this pose, but know that you can always take a different variation as well. So you'll start to slide your right heel in, so your right foot is planted, and then slide your left foot over towards the bottom right corner of your mat. Now you might need to readjust your right foot, and then you can start to slide your hands over to the top right corner. You could cactus the arms, you could reach for opposite elbows. The restorative variation, you can always take your right hand down beside your body, and if it's available, you could grab a hold of that right foot. I really like the planting of this foot because it actually keeps the hips square, but know that you can also extend out this leg and cross either ankle over one another or just have your toes side by side. So Banana Asana, there's lots of different variations. But just as we started practice opening up to that side body, you're gonna feel the same lengthening here. Let your head just rest heavy wherever it's landed, whether gaze is straight ahead or to either side. Allow your shoulder blades to root down into your mat. The backs of your hips are heavy. And you're coming back into this connection not only with self, but also with the earth beneath you. Back into this connection of being fully supported. Find space to soften and release, allowing yourself to feel what you feel, but at the same time to be able to move through it. To not allow those same feelings to take a hold of you on this journey that you're on and start to control it, but to just be little reminders along the way of the external circumstances that are shifting. Whether it's the shape in the body, your mind moving, past or future experiences, beginning to take over the present moment. Can you allow any of that stuck emotion or thought to be acknowledged and then simply released? Just as you let go of the breath you've brought in, you can also let go of any of the tension, the stickiness, the thoughts. Take your time in shifting back through center. So you can slowly take the upper body, and then you can walk your feet in. I always like to readjust the hips, planting both feet. You can always take your knees into your chest. That can feel nice for the low back, especially if you have a little bit of an overarch in your low back. Just to find some nourishing movement before moving on to the other side. And so when you're ready, you can extend your feet and your arms in opposite directions. You might take a couple of breaths just to feel rooted and connected here. And then when you're ready, feet walk over to the bottom left corner. If you're taking the restorative variation, left knee bends so your left foot can plant on your mat. And then walk your hands, maybe even shoulders, over to the top left. Optional to bind your left hand to your left ankle or shin. Right arm can be bent or straight, whatever feels good for this side of the body. But just make sure that within this growth and expansion that you're creating in the physical body, there's still a feeling of being grounded. That as we shift through this moment, this life, that we're not feeling overwhelmed or just jumping from one place to the next, but that there's this deeper sense of connection. So that no matter where we find ourselves in the world, we always can come back home to ourselves. if you notice places that you are trying to grip or force anywhere, you just ease out of them, even taking a little bit less sensation so that you can more fully feel into that part of the pose. Instead of trying to bypass it by being strong, that you just allow yourself to soften, to be a little bit more vulnerable. And vulnerability in this definition of just allowing yourself to feel, of being open to that moment, even if there's uncertainty of what that moment holds. To be vulnerable isn't to be weak, but to really step into our own power. And what makes this life worthwhile is in the feeling. Take 3 more breaths on this side. Allow your breath to be smooth and long, not bothered by worry or control, and just moving at its own natural pace. And then gently unwinding back through center, upper body and lower body. It might feel nice to plant both feet, to pick your hips up and lower them back down. Knees might come into chest, or you could drop your knees over to the left and over to the right. Take any final movements that you're craving to close off your practice before we land in Shavasana. Now, if your low back tends to get sore or tight in Shavasana, you can always take pillows underneath your knees to create a little bit of support in the low back so that there's not a big arch underneath. You can even think about activating a little bit in the core and taking belly button down towards spine or hip bones drawing up. Wherever you are choosing to land in Shavasana, allow yourself to have a whole lot of space. Don't worry about this being the perfect transition. Don't worry about landing in comfort right away. I actually find Shavasana at home can be one of the most challenging poses that we find, as it's easy to get distracted by the things around us. It's easy to come up with reasons of why we need to go. And so I hope that you just give yourself some time to just simply arrive and simply land in this shape. I will leave you here for just a moment in silence from my end so that you can really just connect to yourself and feel without being told what to feel, without being told how. And then I will bring you out of this in just a moment. So there's no rush. Allow yourself to lean into whatever is coming up. You can be amazing. You can turn a phrase into a weapon or a drug. You can be the outcast or be the backlash of somebody's lack of love. Or you can start speaking up. Nothing's gonna hurt you the way their words do, and they settle neath your skin, kept on the inside and no sunlight. Sometimes a shadow wins, but I wonder what would happen if you say what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave. Take a full breath in. And a long exhale, breath out. To be vulnerable is to be brave. To feel that truth on the inside, that is courage. And it takes courage to live from the sense of knowing, even when it doesn't align with what we think we should or we think we have to do or feel. So I hope as you move through whatever this challenge is in front of you, whatever is stopping you from showing up fully, that you just learn to be a little bit kinder as you shift through these emotions and experience. I'll leave you here in Shavasana so you can take as much time as you need to come out of your practice, and truly from the bottom of my heart. Namaste.